The Enigma Machine is a cryptographic device used by the Germans during the Second World War to encrypt secret messages. The only way to decipher these secret messages is to know the machine's settings when the message was first decrypted. Given that it has an unbelievably large number of settings, and the fact that the setting of the machine was changed every day, at the time it was believed impossible to crack. Like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack changes before you can make any good progress. Eventually, Enigma was cracked by a team led by Alan Turing, building on earlier works from Marian, Rejewski and other Polish mathematicians. But this got me thinking, Enigma is a 100-year-old tech, and with computer power getting ever better, surely a home computer would be able to brute force Enigma. I mean, how long could it take? Now bear in mind throughout this video I'm going to use the terms brute forcing or cracking Enigma, and by this I just mean to run through every possible setting to find one that correctly decrypts the message. In reality, you would use some clever cryptography and mathematics to find out the setting much quicker, but that wouldn't make for much of an interesting video. There are four main parts to the Enigma machine that we'll focus on in this video. There's the input and output, which in this case is just a keyboard and a board of lights, and as you would expect, you press a key on the keyboard, that letter is encrypted, and the output letter light would show up on the light board. Second, we have the rotors. These rotors would take a letter as input and another letter as an output, and each rotor was different, and the operator would pick 3 from a box of 5 and wire them one after another. When a letter is sent through the rotors to be encrypted, the rightmost rotor would tick over by 1 position. It takes 26 ticks for the rotor to do 1 full rotation, at which point the middle rotor would tick over once. And similarly, once the middle rotor has done 1 full rotation, the leftmost rotor would tick over once. Third part is the reflector, and it simply puts all the letters of the alphabet into 13 pairs, and when it sees one of the letters as input, it outputs the other, and vice versa. So if P and F were to be paired up, an input of P would give an output of F, and an input of F would give an output of P. The reflectors were fixed per model, and its purpose is so that the Enigma machine could both encrypt and decrypt messages, rather than needing 2 separate machines. Finally, and most importantly, we have the plug board. It's made up of 26 sockets, each connected to a bulb on the light board, and its purpose was to swap letters around. A cable connecting 2 sockets would be used by the operator, which has 2 effects. Firstly, when pressing a key on the keyboard, instead of that letter that's on the key being sent through the Enigma machine to be encrypted, the connected letter would be sent instead. And secondly, after a letter had been encrypted, instead of that letter's light bulb being lit on the light board, the connected letter would have its corresponding bulb lit instead. The operator would use 10 of these connectors, making 10 pairs of letters and leaving the other 6 unaffected. And it might not seem obvious now, but the plug board is what gives rise to the cryptographical might of the Enigma machine, giving more settings than there are stars in the Milky Way. To get a sense of scale, let's build a simplified model with just the keyboard, lights, rotor and reflector to try work out if we could crack it with a modern computer. When a key is pressed on the keyboard, the letter is scrambled through the rotors, swapped and sent back by the reflector, has one more pass through the rotors, and finally is output onto the light board. Remember, the only way that we'd be able to decrypt a message is if we check all the possible settings. So just how many settings of this simplified machine are there? Well, most of the components are fixed. The keyboard and lights don't change, and the reflector is fixed per model, so the only thing that really changes are the rotors. Each time the rotors are set up, there's 5 choices for the first one, 4 choices for the second, and 3 for the last. Which means there are 60 possible combinations of rotors. Each of these rotors can start at any of the 26 possible ticks, and if we're going to check them all, we have to account for all 26 in the first rotor, all 26 in the second, and all 26 in the last one, meaning that there are just over 1 million different combinations of rotors' initial settings. And how long would that take to brute force with all these different combinations? How fast we can churn through all these settings will depend on how many operations our test computer's CPU can do. That's just a multiplication of how many cores it has and how many operations each of those cores can do. The AMD Ryzen Threadripper has 96 cores, and each of those cores can do a maximum of 5.1 billion operations a second. Assuming each core can do its 5.1 billion operations every second, and all 96 cores can work together in perfect harmony, we'd get 489.6 billion operations per second. We would then want to use all of these operations to check every single possible setting of our simplified Enigma machine in order to crack it. So the obvious question now is, how many operations does it take to check one setting of the Enigma machine? It's a little hard to give an exact number here, and without wanting to get bogged down in unnecessary detail, it'd take somewhere around 1,000 operations to check one setting. So if our test computer can get through 489.6 billion operations per second, it could do 489.6 million Enigma settings per second. Now going back to our simplified Enigma model, how long would it take for our test computer to crack it? Well, we calculated there are just over 1 million possible settings, which checked at a speed of 489.6 million per second, it'd only take about 2 milliseconds. So if this simplified version of the Enigma machine can be cracked in just a few milliseconds, what's with the title of the video? Well, that's where the plug board comes in. Quick refresher on the plug board, it's made up of 26 sockets, each connected to a bulb on the light board, and the connectors are used to swap around pairs of letters. So given this plug board and the standard 10 connectors, just how many different possible settings are there? The way we're going to approach this is to count how many possible ways we can arrange these 10 connectors, and then correct for any overcounting. So since we have 10 connectors, there are 20 plugs that we need to account for. This means that on a blank plug board, the first one has 26 choices, and then after that decision there are 25 choices, and after that there are 24 choices, and so on, until all 20 choices are made. Now with this, we're overcounting in two different ways. Firstly, it doesn't matter which end of the connector is plugged in first and which is plugged in second. All that matters is that there is a connector between the two letters. So the number we have at the minute counts a connector from A to B as a different thing from B to A when they're actually the same setting. So this means that every connector is being double counted, and since there are 10 connectors, we're double counting 10 times. So to correct this, we just divide the number by a factor of 2 to the 10. And the second way that we're overcounting is that it doesn't matter in which order the connectors are plugged in. Say we plug in a connector from A to B and another from C to D. If we had instead plugged the connector from C to D in first and then the one from A to B, it wouldn't make any difference. We're overcounting by how many different ways you can put in those connectors. So to correct, we have to divide by the number of ways you can arrange the 10 connectors, which is 10 factorial. This leaves us with a final number of plug board settings at about 150 trillion, which is about 1,000 times more than the number of stars in the Milky Way. So given the 150 trillion plug board settings, can we just brute force this fully fledged version of Enigma? Well, first off we have to remember that the plug board is in addition to the rotors, not instead of it. And so the real number of possible Enigma settings is the number of rotor settings times by the number of plug board settings, which is around 158 quintillion settings. Remember our test computer from before that cracked the simplified version in about 2 milliseconds? Well, how long would it take that computer to crack this full version of Enigma? If it can check 489.6 million settings per second, it would take about 324 billion seconds, and that's about 10,295 years. And the setting of the machine we're trying to solve changes every 24 hours, so it's pretty safe to say there's absolutely no chance. We took a powerful modern computer and pushed it to its absolute limit, making some pretty generous assumptions, and even so it would take over 1,000 years to crack one day's settings. It just goes to show the strength of the mathematics and the cryptography used all the way back in the 1930s and 40s, even with extremely limited computing power, and it highlights just how impressive the achievement it is, not only to break Enigma once, but to do it every single day. Thank you for watching. I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a comment and like on the video, and subscribe to let me know what kind of videos you'd like in the future.